Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. In the early 1970s, a Caribbean-born reggae musician and football fanatic would leave his band and embarked on a solo career that helped music from that part of the world explode in popularity across the four corners of the globe from the middle of that decade up into the 1980s. On first listen, I'm sure many of you will think I was talking about Bob Marley, but rather, this artist and subject matter of today's video is the great Eddy Grant, a musical dynamo that wears several hats, including singer, instrumentalist, producer, and record label boss. If you were around in the 1980s, this man's music was everywhere and was definitely a major part of the sonic tapestry and soundtrack of that wonderful decade. Though an international superstar with massive fan bases in the Americas and Europe, he would spawn a fanatical following in Africa and was so influential on the continent that he is believed by many to be the spark and inspiration for the Afro-pop sound revolution that's so popular today. With over 5 decades in the music business, there aren't many artists with his range, as he started out as a pop sensation, morphed into a radical reggae musician, and forged a distinct subgenre of music called ring bang, a true genius who is impossible to imitate. He will over time perfect a stunning fusion of reggae, calypso, and funk. But for all his heroics, he isn't celebrated enough. So now without further ado, let's take a look at the legendary rise and career of the great Eddy Grant. He was born ordinary Edmond Montague Grant on March the 5th, 1948, in the village of Plaisance, Guyana, to a jazz musician father and a housewife mother. He would grow up immersed in indigenous music and developed a love of tan singing that was a hybrid Indo-Caribbean singing style. In 1960, the family moved to England when he was 12 years old, and coming of age in London, he would embrace rock and R&B, and by the age of 17, he formed his first band called The Equals, a group that was really unique in those times for being among the first multiracial groups to become popular. And after 2 years of paying their dues on the pub and nightclub circuit, the group would bag a record deal with President Records and release their debut single, I Won't Be There, in 1967. And though not a hit, it would earn them a big fan base and helped to launch their first album into the top 10 on the UK albums charts. Eddy's songwriting prowess was noticed quickly by his label, and he would soon be hired to write songs for other artists, including the track Rough Rider for ska reggae artist Prince Buster, and he would also pen The Equals' biggest hit, Baby Come Back, which charted and reached number 1 in several countries. And though just 20 years old, he had the awareness to form a label called Torpedo Records as a way to market British-made reggae singles. However, in 1971, he would encounter a life-changing event when he suffered a heart attack and collapsed lung, as his body simply broke down due to the hectic and brutal touring schedules. After he recovered, he decided to quit The Equals and step away from performing, and instead would set up his own recording outfit that he named Coach Studios. That was the first black-owned studio in Europe. He established it in 1972 and soon after formed a label called Ice Records in 1974. And in those days, he would do his best to develop interests outside of music and even tried his hands at acting. But the pull of music was just too strong, and he was soon back to making his own music. He released his solo album in the self-titled Eddy Grant in 1975, which was followed by Message Man in 1977, on which he wrote all the songs and played every instrument. They were both well received critically, but didn't make much of a splash on the sales charts. But this wouldn't dampen his enthusiasm, and he poured even more energy for his next project over the next 2 years. And the result of all his efforts was the phenomenal 1979 release, Walking on Sunshine, a body of music which is regarded as one of the great albums of that decade. A brilliant, refreshing sonic explosion of reggae and calypso with some songs that fuse both genres with soul and funk. And it also featured strong social messaging and commentary, like on the track named Living on the Frontline, which broke into the UK Top 20. And that album also reached number 11 on the UK albums charts. But his main impact was felt in Africa, where it sold millions of copies, and was big, especially in Nigeria, where it became a phenomenon that simply reset and rewired that country's music and sound for years to come, with many artists flying over to London for Eddy to produce their music at his studio. And one popular example of this is superstar Nigerian artist Sonia Kosun, for whom Eddy produced the anti-apartheid anthem Fire in Soweto in 1978. In fact, Eddy Grant was so popular in Nigeria that he would remake the song Say I Love You of the Walking in Sunshine album in the Nigerian language of Yoruba, titled Wipe Mofe. He was by then a bankable solo artist, so it was no surprise that the 1981 album Can't Get Enough was also a hit. His trademark sound of reggae, funk and calypso was now very recognizable and shined brightly through the entire compilation to his fans' delight. He would interpret reggae with an electronic feel that worked wonders on tracks like 1980's Do You Feel My Love that reached number 8 on the UK singles charts. But all these hits and exploits would look average in comparison when his album Killer on the Rampage hit the streets in 1982 in devastating fashion. It was a massive worldwide hit that had anthems like Electric Avenue, which became one of the biggest songs of 1983. The song entered the top 10 in 15 countries and hit number 1 in the US and Canada. It was inspired by the real-life Electric Avenue in London that was among the scenes of the Brixton riots of 1981. It got nominated for a Grammy but lost to Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. The album's second single, I Don't Want to Dance, was also a smash hit that went to number 1 on the UK singles charts and stayed up there for 3 weeks. It was also number 1 in Belgium, Ireland, South Africa, Switzerland, and charted in many other countries. It was at that period, at the peak of his huge success, that Eddy decided to leave England and move to Barbados, where he would open his now famous Blue Wave Studios. He would step back a little from the limelight and chose to focus on working with local Barbadian artists and did a lot to help the careers of local artists like Mighty Gabby and David Rudder in those times. However, he was soon in the limelight again as he would perform and produce the song Romancing the Stone for the hit 1984 movie of the same name that starred Michael Douglas and Kathleen Kennedy. A quiet period would follow for a few years as the albums he released in that period failed to make much impact in the charts. But in 1988, he would re-enter the charts with the smash hit anti-apartheid anthem Give Me Hope Joanna. That song was a banger and worldwide success that reached number 7 in the UK singles charts, number 1 in Spain, the Netherlands, Belgium and Italy, and the top 10 in 14 other European countries. The song was banned in South Africa by the apartheid regime, but still resonated heavily in that country in what were the dying days of segregation. Eddy Grant would keep releasing albums into the 1990s and would put out 2 in the 2000s, and the last being Plaisance in 2017, which was named after his hometown back in Guyana. Now in his late 70s, he's living his best life in Barbados, running his studio and reaping the fruits of his marvelous career as a senior statesman in world music. A musical titan whose impact and achievements are criminally underreported. The great Eddy Grant, a true visionary of reggae and indeed world music, the likes of which are very rare and the kind that we may never see again. So there you have it. Thank you for watching this video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, God bless.